the thick humidity of the Southeast Asian jungle pressing down like a heavy shroud. Sweat beads on every face, trickling in rivulets under the relentless sun. Targets east. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and distant rain. Lieutenant Emily Harper stood at rigid attention before Sergeant Harlan Knox in the briefing area of Forward Operating Base Delta. At 28, with her blonde hair pulled back in a tight regulation bun, her blue eyes steady and unflinching, she cut a figure of quiet determination. Her toned, athletic build curves that spoke of strength, honed through endless drills, belied the fragility others saw in her gender alone. But the men around her, weathered veterans with scars from forgotten battles, radiated doubt. So they sent us a blonde doll to play soldier. Knox sneered, his voice rough as gravel circling her like a wolf eyeing prey. It carried across the assembled Bravo team, echoing their unspoken prejudices. Tell me, Lieutenant, have you ever heard a shot fired in anger? Or is this just some desk job fantasy for you, little girl? The jungle seemed to hold its breath, the distant calls of birds fading into silence. Emily's jaw tightened just a fraction, but her voice stayed level calm as a still pond. Yes, Sergeant, I have. Knox exchanged smirks with his men, their faces etched with the hard lines of multiple deployments. These were Marines, forged in the fires of Southeast Asia's treacherous terrain, men who had seen brothers fall, who carried the weight of history from Vietnam to today. To them, she was an outsider, a liability dead weight, in a world where weakness meant death. But in her blue eyes, a flash of fleeting memory of her father, a WWII hero who stormed the beaches of Normandy, only to never return home. The letter he wrote before his last mission, tucked away in her gear, whispered of sacrifice and unyielding resolve. What secrets did this young woman harbor? What would she prove in this green hell, where survival demanded more than met the eye? And hidden beneath her sleeve, a glimpse of ink, a cobra coiled around an eagle, hinted at depths untold. But what secret lay behind her seemingly fragile appearance, one that would leave the entire team stunned and forever changed? In a world quick to judge sometimes, the greatest strength hides in plain sight. The jungle's oppressive heat wrapped around Forward Operating Base Delta, like a living thing, the air thick with the buzz of insects and the distant rumble of thunder on the horizon. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, a forgotten corner of Southeast Asia, where American Marines held the line against shadows that never fully revealed themselves. Lieutenant Emily Harper stepped off the chopper, her boots sinking slightly into the muddy ground, the rotor wash whipping her blonde hair, despite the tight bun that held it in place. At 28, she carried herself with a quiet authority, her body toned and athletic from years of rigorous training curves that spoke of feminine strength rather than fragility, her full bust rising and falling steadily under her fatigues. But it was her blue eyes, sharp and unflinching, that caught the light eyes that had seen more than her youthful face suggested. She was here under cover, listed as a training instructor fresh from Camp Pendleton, a stateside base where Marines honed their skills in controlled environments. No one needed to know the truth, not yet. As she shouldered her gear, including the familiar weight of her M40 sniper rifle slung across her back, she scanned the base. Tents and barricades dotted the clearing men, moving with the purposeful efficiency of those who lived on the edge of danger. This was no training ground. This was the real thing, a forward outpost, echoing the gritty realities of past conflicts, from the dense jungles of Vietnam to the deserts of more recent wars. For many here, it stirred memories of a time when service meant everything, when bonds, forged in fire, lasted a lifetime. Sergeant Harlan Knox approached first his face, a map of wrinkles and scars, a man in his 50s, who embodied the old Guard veterans who had cut their teeth in operations that reminded them of Vietnam's endless patrols. His eyes narrowed as he sized her up, his voice booming over the chatter of the base. "Well, look what the bird dropped off. Lieutenant Harper, is it? From Pendleton?" They must be scraping the bottom of the barrel if they're sending instructors to the front lines. His men, a ragtag group of battle-hardened Marines, gathered around their laughter, low and skeptical. These were men who had seen too much losses in ambushes, friends carried out on stretchers, and they wore their distrust like armor. Knox circled her slowly, his boots crunching on the gravel. "Tell me, Princess, you ever humped through real jungle? Or is this your first time away from the simulators and the air-conditioned classrooms?" The nickname stung, but Emily held her ground, her decisive gestures, straightening her posture, meeting his gaze without flinching, speaking volumes. The team chimed in, their voices laced with the kind of prejudice that had lingered in the military for generations. Women in combat, just like back in WWII, they were nurses or secretaries' burdens we had to protect. One grizzled corporal muttered, evoking the era when American heroes stormed beaches and liberated Europe. But women were often sidelined. She's probably here for diversity points, not to pull her weight. Another added their words, echoing the old resentments that senior audiences might recognize from their own times when roles were rigidly defined. Emily felt the weight of their stares, the unspoken assumption that she was dead. Weight a liability in a world where one mistake could cost lives. But she said nothing, her mind drifting to the letter tucked in her breast pocket, a faded envelope from her father, a Marine who had fought in the Pacific Theater during World War II. He had written it before shipping out to Okinawa, words of wisdom passed down through generations of service. "Duty isn't about glory," it read. "It's about standing tall when the world pushes you down. Remember, Normandy men from farms and factories became heroes because they believed in something bigger." She could almost hear his voice gravelly from years of command, reminding her of the Marine Corps' storied history, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, a legacy of resilience that had shaped America. It was a heritage that fueled her a quiet fire in her chest amid the prejudice. As the day wore on, Emily integrated into the routine briefings, in the sweltering command tent, gear checks, under the watchful eyes of the team. Knox assigned her menial tasks, like inventorying supplies, his way of testing her mettle. "Don't want you breaking a nail out there," he quipped, drawing chuckles. But Emily moved with precision, her hand steady, as she cleaned her M40, a rifle with its own history, adopted by the Marines in 1966, chambered in .3 WWII. Winchester, a weapon that had proven itself in Vietnam's dense foliage. She knew its every contour, the way it balanced in her grip, a silent partner in the trials to come. In quieter moments, away from the prying eyes, she pulled out her father's letter, again tracing the faded ink. It spoke of the greatest generation's sacrifices, the D-Day landings, where thousands stormed beaches under withering fire, the bonds of brotherhood that transcended prejudice. "We fought for a better world, one where anyone could serve with honor," he had written. For Emily, it was more than words. It was a call to prove that legacy lived on even in the face of doubt. The base hummed with activity, radios crackling with reports of enemy movements, men sharing stories of past deployments that echoed the senior audience's own memories of service or loss. Yet beneath it all, the prejudice simmered, a barrier Emily would have to shatter. As evening fell, the jungle alive with nocturnal sounds, Emily stood at the perimeter, her blue eyes scanning the tree line. She could feel the team's eyes on her, waiting for her to falter. But deep down she carried the strength of her heritage, the unyielding spirit of American Marines, who had faced down tyranny across decades. Little did they know, her cover as a simple trainer hid skills forged in classified operations, abilities that would soon turn their world upside down. For now, though, she endured a quiet force in a storm of skepticism, ready for the call that would change everything. The first light of dawn filtered through the canopy, casting long shadows across Fob Delta as the base stirred to life. The air was already thick with humidity, a reminder of the unforgiving jungle that surrounded them, a place where vigilance was the difference between life and death, much like the stories Emily's father had shared in his letters about the Pacific campaigns of World War II. She had spent the night reflecting on those words, the prejudice from Knox, and the team still echoing in her mind like a distant artillery barrage. But duty called, and as the Marines geared up for the day, Emily felt a quiet resolve settle over her, the weight of her M40 rifle a familiar comfort against her shoulder. Sergeant Knox gathered Bravo team in the briefing tent, the map spread out like a battlefield from another era, marked with patrol routes that snaked through the dense terrain. "Listen up," he barked, his voice carrying the gravelly authority of a man who had led men through hellish patrols, reminiscent of Vietnam's endless green mazes. "We've got intel on possible enemy movement in Sector Echo, scattered transmissions, nothing concrete, but command. Wants eyes on the ground. We're patrolling the Valley Trail at 600, standard formation point. Man flankers rear guard." "Harper," he turned to Emily with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "You're assigned as observer. Stay back, take notes, and try not to slow us down. This ain't Pendleton Playground." The team nodded, slinging their rifles and checking ammo with the practiced efficiency of veterans who knew the cost of complacency. Emily met Knox's gaze steadily, her blue eyes unflinching, though inside the dismissal stung like salt in a wound. Observer, another way of saying, stay out of the way. But she bit back any retort, remembering her father's advice. Actions speak louder than words, Prove them wrong on the field. As they moved out, the jungle swallowed them whole, the underbrush, thick and tangled vines grabbing at boots like enemy hands. The heat built quickly, sweat soaking through fatigues, and the men grumbled about the princess, in their midst, their voices low but audible. "Hope she doesn't faint at the first bug bite." One muttered, evoking chuckles that carried echoes of old prejudices, from wars where women were kept far from the front. 3 hours into the patrol, Emily spotted it first, a subtle anomaly in the mud half hidden among the roots and fallen leaves. She knelt, her toned frame moving with graceful precision, her fingers tracing the outline. It was a footprint, fresh and unmistakable combat. Boot tread, size 11 with a military-grade pattern that screamed hostile presence. Her heart quickened memories of her classified training, flooding back lessons in tracking that went beyond basic boot camp, honed in simulations of real-world threats. "Sergeant," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the humid air without alarm. "We've got recent traffic here. Enemy bootprint heading west, toward the ridgeline." Knox stomped over his face, reddening under the camouflage paint, the team halting behind him with rifles at the ready. He glanced down dismissively, kicking at the mud, as if to erase her words. "That's just some animal track, Lieutenant. Christ, they teach you nothing useful back at Pendleton. We're in a jungle, monkeys, boars, you name it." The squad exchanged glances, some smirking, others shifting uncomfortably. Corporal Miguel Santos, a younger Marine with sharp eyes, knelt beside her, studying the print more closely, but Knox waved him off. "With respect, Sergeant Warnoy." Emily pressed her tone, measured but firm, pointing to the telltale grooves. "That's a tactical soul pattern, not natural. We should alter course. This valley's a funnel perfect for an ambush, just like the traps in Vietnam our vets warned about." Knox rounded on her, his anger flashing like a muzzle burst. Enough, Harper. You're here to observe, not play tactician. Fall in and keep your expert opinions to yourself." The dismissal hung heavy, creating a tension thicker than the vines around them. Emily felt the sting her mind racing back to her father's sacrifices, the way he had faced doubt in his own ranks during WWII, proving his worth through deeds, not debates. She tugged her sleeve down, hiding the cobra tattoo that coiled around the eagle, a symbol of her hidden strength, and fell back into line. But the prickling at the nape of her neck grew instincts, screaming danger in this green labyrinth, where history repeated itself in ambushes and betrayals. They pressed on deeper into the valley, the natural funnel closing around them like a trap from the annals of military lore. The radio crackled with static, the operator reporting faint transmissions, garbled words too close for comfort. Emily's hand instinctively brushed her M40 fingers, tracing the stock a rifle with a legacy of precision in conflicts where one shot could turn the tide. Then the jungle fell unnaturally silent. No birds, no rustle of wildlife, just the soft patter of sweat-dampened leaves. A glint of metal flashed in the trees ahead, sunlight on a barrel. "Contact," Emily whispered, but the word was drowned by the eruption of gunfire from the ridgeline. Chaos exploded in an instant, bullets shredding foliage bark, flying like shrapnel, the acrid smell of cordite filling the air. The enemy had positioned perfectly, catching Bravo team in a deadly crossfire, echoes of classic ambushes that had claimed so many in past wars. Knox dove for cover, shouting orders. "Return fire, 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock." The team scattered, training kicking in, but Emily didn't flinch. In one fluid motion, she raised her M40 scope to eye breath, steady as her father's lessons echoed. One shot, one chance. She squeezed the trigger, and 150 yards away, an enemy gunner crumpled silently. The call to adventure had come not in glory, but in survival, and Emily Harper, the underestimated observer, was thrust into the heart of it, her actions. Now the only thing standing between her team and oblivion. The ambush's fury raged on bullets, whipping through the leaves like angry hornets, splintering wood, and kicking up mud in chaotic bursts. Bravo team hunkered down behind fallen logs and root clusters, returning fire with disciplined bursts. But the enemy held the high ground, their positions turning the valley into a killing field. Emily Harper, her M40 still warm from that first precise shot, scanned the ridgeline through her scope, her heart pounding not just from the adrenaline, but from the weight of the moment. This was it, the call she had anticipated, yet dreaded. In the split seconds between breaths, she saw the pattern, the hostiles funneling them south, their heaviest fire concentrated there, leaving a narrow gap to the northeast. It was a classic trap, one her training had drilled into her, reminiscent of the deadly ambushes that had claimed so many in Vietnam's tangled hells. "Sergeant," she called over the din, her voice cutting through the gunfire. With unexpected clarity, her blue eyes locked on Knox as he clutched his grazed arm, blood seeping through his sleeve. "We need to break northeast through that gap. They're herding us south into their kill zone." Her suggestion hung in the air, born of instincts, honed far beyond what her cover allowed her to reveal. But Knox's face twisted in fury, pain and pride warring in his expression as he popped up to fire a burst before ducking back. "What the hell, Harper? You're an observer, not the damn CEO. Get to cover and shut your mouth." The team scattered in their positions, caught the exchange, some laughing mockingly amid the chaos, their voices laced with derision. "Princess thinks she's Patton now," one shouted, evoking the ghost of WWII. Generals who had led charges across Europe. "Stick to your notes, Lieutenant. We've got this." The ridicule hit like shrapnel, belittling her in the heat of battle, where every second counted. Emily felt the doubt creep in a cold shadow over her resolve. Why speak up? Why risk more scorn when they saw her as nothing but a token, a woman out of place in this man's war? She almost stayed silent, her finger hovering near the trigger, ready to fire supportively, but passively, letting Knox's ego steer them into disaster. The internal struggle tore at her self-doubt, whispering that she wasn't worthy, that her presence here was a farce. Flashbacks assaulted her, the telegram arriving at their family home in rural Virginia, the one that shattered her world at age 12. Regret to inform you, Sergeant Thomas Harper, killed in action. Heroic sacrifice. Her father's body never returned, lost to the Pacific's depths after his ship went down off Okinawa. He had been her anchor, a Marine who embodied the Corps' ethos, semper fidelis, always faithful, fighting for a nation that valued grit over gender. Am I worthy of his legacy? She thought the question echoing in her mind like a rifle's report. He faced down the enemy without hesitation, but here I am, questioned at every turn. Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong. Tears stung her eyes, not from fear, but from the raw ache of loss, the prejudice amplifying the void left by her father. She could hear his voice in her head from those cherished letters. The battlefield tests us all, Em. It's not about being the strongest. It's about standing when others fall. But in this moment, nearly giving up, felt easier the mockery, a barrier too high. Why fight for a team that dismissed her? Her hand trembled slightly on the M40, the rifle that had become an extension of her will, its history, a silent testament to Marines who had overcome odds in wars long past. As she shifted position, her sleeve rode up, revealing the cobra tattoo wrapped around an eagle on her wrist, a small twist of ink that caught the dappled light. The cobra, coiled and ready to strike, symbolized the hidden venom of her skills. The eagle, her father's emblem from his WWII unit, a badge of soaring freedom and unyielding patriotism. Santos, positioned nearby, caught a glimpse, his eyes widening in curiosity amid the gunfire. What secret did that mark hold? It was a hint of her mysterious past, a classified world of special operations where she had earned her stripes in shadows, far from the prejudices of conventional ranks. But the doubt persisted, nearly paralyzing her. Knox's orders barked on, hold the line, suppress that ridge, and the team followed their fire, sporadic but fierce. Emily almost retreated into silence, letting fate decide her self-doubt a heavier burden than the jungle's heat. The legacy of her father felt distant, unattainable, as if she were tarnishing it by even being here, questioned and belittled. Yet as another round whizzed past, grazing her helmet, something stirred, a spark of that inherited resilience. The cobra in her tattoo seemed to writhe, a reminder that venom could turn the tide. She couldn't abandon them, not like this. With a deep breath, she chambered another round her voice, rising again despite the mockery. Sergeant, the Northeast Gap. It's our only way out. But Knox waved her off, his prejudice blinding him to the truth. The struggle raged within her, the call to action pulling against the urge to withdraw, her heart torn between legacy and doubt. In that crucible, Emily teetered on the edge of giving up the laughter of her comrades, a chorus of dismissal. But the eagle in her tattoo, soaring above the cobra, whispered of higher flights, of proving worth, not for their approval, but for the memory of those who had sacrificed before. The battle intensified, and with it, her resolve began to harden the refusal, giving way to an inevitable acceptance. For in the jungles of war, as in life, the true test was not avoiding the call, but answering it despite the pain. The gunfire's roar seemed to shake the very roots of the jungle, but Emily Harper refused to let doubt claim her. As the enemy pressed their advantage, She shifted position with calculated grace, her M40 barking again, another hostile down, crumpling silently in the underbrush, 200 yards out. Knox's orders still rang out stubborn and unyielding, but the team's fire was faltering, pinned under the crossfire. Corporal Miguel Santos, crouched behind a cluster of boulders, watched her with narrowed eyes. He was younger than most in Bravo Team, his face less lined by years, but hardened by recent deployments, a man who had lost friends in similar hells. At first, he had shared the skepticism, chuckling along with the princess jabs. But now, as Emily called out targets with eerie precision, machine gunner at 10 o'clock, 180 yards, and dropped them one by one, doubt flickered in his gaze, replaced by something akin to curiosity. "Harper, what the hell?" Santos shouted over the din, crawling closer, as she reloaded with mechanical efficiency. "That shot, you threaded it through the leaves, like it was nothing." Emily spared him a glance, her blue eyes steady amid the chaos, but said nothing at first. Her mind was a whirlwind, the refusal still fresh, Knox's dismissal echoing like a wound. But Santos pressed on his voice, laced with reluctant admiration. "And that tattoo, I glimpsed cobra around an eagle. That's not standard issue. My old man had an eagle inked from his WWII days, said it meant freedom, strength. Yours. It looks like it means business." The words struck a chord, pulling her back to her father's legacy, the man who had embodied that eagle's soar rising from a small-town farm boy to a marine storming Pacific Islands, sacrificing all for a cause greater than himself. Emily exhaled slowly, squeezing off another round that silenced a flanking hostile. "It's a reminder, Corporal," she replied, her tone even, but edged with emotion, "of where I come from and what I'm capable of." Santos nodded, firing his own rifle to cover her as she repositioned. He didn't push further then, but in that moment, his doubt began to crack. He had seen too many good Marines fall to prejudice stories from his own family about the barriers faced in past wars. Gradually, he started relaying her calls to the team. Northeast Gap, like she said, his voice carrying a hint of belief that Knox couldn't ignore forever. As the firefight dragged on, Santos became her unwitting ally, his actions speaking where words failed, reminding her subtly of her father's unyielding faith. He always said true allies show up in the fire, not the calm. But it was in the lulls between bursts, as Emily's mind raced for a way out, that deeper memories surfaced. Memories of a mentor who had shaped her more than any drill sergeant. Flashback to a rainy afternoon at a classified training facility stateside years before this deployment. Emily, then a fresh-faced recruit pushing through force recon selection, had hit a wall. The instructors were relentless, the tactics grueling deep reconnaissance missions, simulating WWII infiltrations behind enemy lines, where Marines like her father had gathered intel that turned tides at battles like Guadalcanal. Exhausted, covered in mud, she had collapsed after a failed sim dout, whispering she didn't belong in this elite world, dominated by men. That's when Colonel Evelyn Reed appeared, a figure from another era, a former Vietnam-era female veteran, one of the first women to break barriers in military intelligence during a time when prejudice ran deeper than the Mekong Delta. Reed, now in her 70s, but still sharp as a Ka-bar knife, had served as a nurse and covert operative, gathering recon in ways that saved countless lives. Her story's a bridge between WWII's heroic assaults and Vietnam's shadowy guerrilla wars. She pulled Emily aside, her voice, firm yet compassionate eyes, carrying the weight of battles fought not just against enemies, but against the system itself. "Listen, Harper," Reed had said, sitting on a log as rain pattered around them. "Force recon isn't about brute strength. It's about deep reconnaissance, slipping into the heart of danger, unseen, gathering intel that wins wars before the first shot. It started in WWII, with raiders scouting Pacific Islands evolved in Vietnam to tunnel rats and long-range patrols. You track, you observe, you strike precisely. But you'll face doubt prejudice that says women can't handle the shadows. Emily had nodded, tears mixing with rain, her self-doubt raw. How did you overcome it, ma'am? The stares, the dismissals, like I'm just filling a quota. Reed's laugh was wry, seasoned by decades. Overcome prejudice through action, not words. I faced it in Nam men saying women were burdens, like in WWII when we were kept from combat. But I proved them wrong by doing the job, infiltrating villages, decoding signals, saving patrols from ambushes. One mission, I crawled through mud for hours, breathing through a reed, just like the tactics we're teaching you. Force recon demands invisibility, geocode filtering to mask positions, concealment that turns you into a ghost. You have that in you, girl. Your father's eagle, let it soar above the snakes of doubt. Reed had traced a finger over Emily's fresh tattoo, the cobra and eagle still red from the needle. This ink, it's your armor. Act, and the world changes. The memory flooded Emily with renewed strength. Reed's words, a fresh anchor in this storm, a female mentor's wisdom, adding layers to her father's legacy, showing that women had always been warriors, even when history overlooked them. Back in the present, as Santos covered her flank, firing steadily, he glanced over. Your old man, he was a Marine too. Right bet he'd be proud seeing you now. Emily nodded, the ally's words bridging her internal isolation. He taught me to stand tall. And Colonel Reed, she showed me how. Santos's belief grew, his doubts melting as he echoed her calls louder, the team slowly shifting under the pressure. The education in those moments was visceral. Force recon tactics, born from WWII's need for elite scouts, refined in Vietnam's asymmetric warfare. Deep recon meant penetrating enemy lines undetected, using natural cover signaling, with beacons that could call in strikes without a word. Emily embodied it now, her actions educating the team in real time. Knox grudgingly began to listen as her predictions proved true, the Northeast Gap becoming their lifeline. Santos, now fully an ally, reminded her of her roots. If your dad could see this, it was enough to push her forward, the mentor's voice, and allies' faith intertwining with her father's memory, turning refusal into resolve. As the team inched toward escape, Emily's heart swelled with quiet determination, the prejudices cracking the legacy alive. Reed's lesson rang true action over words, and in Santos, she found not just an ally, but a mirror to her own growth, ready to cross into the deeper trials ahead. With Santos's words still resonating like a quiet affirmation, Emily felt the shift, the threshold beckoning the jungle's depths, calling her to step beyond the veil of doubt. The team, battered but unbroken, pressed forward under Knox's grudging lead. The Northeast Gap, a narrow promise of escape. Emily moved among them, her presence now a subtle force, the M40 in her hands, a bridge between her father's WWII valor and the harsh realities of this modern quagmire. The air grew denser as they delved deeper, the canopy closing overhead like a green cathedral, shadows dancing in ways that stirred memories of Reed's Vietnam tales. The jungle doesn't forgive hesitation. Harper, it tests your soul. As Bravo team advanced deeper into the foliage, the jungle transformed from a mere backdrop to a living entity, vines snaking like tripwires, the ground soft and treacherous underfoot, echoing the perilous patrols of Vietnam, where every step could trigger a booby trap. The air grew thicker, the humidity a suffocating blanket that reminded Emily of Reed's stories. In Nam, the jungle was the real enemy, silent, watchful, hiding death in its shadows. Emily led subtly from the middle, her senses on high alert, blue eyes, scanning the tree line for anomalies. The team moved in formation, Knox at the front, with his point man Santos covering the flank, their boots crunching leaves that muffled distant echoes. Emily felt the danger building up, prickling at her skin, like the static before a storm. The jungle fell quiet, too quiet, the birds' chatter fading, the rustle of leaves, the only sound, besides their labored breaths. It was the same eerie hush Reed had described in her mentorship sessions. In Nam's silence was the enemy's ally. Listen for what isn't there. Knox pushed ahead, but Emily knelt briefly, her toned frame steady, as she examined a cluster of disturbed ferns, ambush indicators, straight out of Force recon manuals, rooted in WWII reconnaissance tactics, where scouts like her father's unit had infiltrated Japanese-held islands under similar cover. "Sergeant, we should veer off trail," she suggested, again her voice, calm but insistent, drawing on that legacy of deep observation. Knox waved her off, but the mini-climax struck without warning, a sharp crack from the ridge, followed by a hail of gunfire that shredded the air. Bullets tore through the foliage, sending bark flying like confetti from hell, the acrid smoke choking the breath. "Ambush!" Knox bellowed, diving behind a log as the team scattered for cover, their rifles barking in response. Chaos rained the valley a death trap, just as Emily had warned, mirroring the brutal lessons of Vietnam's tunnel-riddled battles, where silence had preceded slaughter. Emily dropped prone, her M40 up in an instant scope, aligning with practiced ease. Through the crosshairs, she locked on an enemy gunner 200 yards distant, his form hazy in the dappled light, but clear in her trained eye. She breathes steadily, pulls the trigger. The rifle's report cut sharp through the din, the enemy crumpling like a discarded rag, his weapon silenced mid-burst. "What caliber history from 1966, born in Vietnam's fire?" She thought fleetingly the round's legacy, a quiet roar in her veins, saving lives, as it had for generations of Marines facing impossible odds. Santos fired beside her, his shots covering, as she acquired the next target. "Nice one, Lieutenant," he called, the alliance blooming in the heat of battle. The team rallied, their fire more focused, but the threshold was fully crossed. Emily immersed in the real challenge, her actions weaving her father's eagle spirit into the fabric of survival. The firefight intensified the enemy, adapting with ruthless efficiency, their rounds chewing the earth around Bravo team. Emily commanded subtly, her voice a thread of authority amid the storm. "Santos, flank. Right, suppress that nest at 11 o'clock. She shifted, dropping another hostile with mechanical precision, her shots creating pockets of safety. Knox pushed forward, but a burst caught him square around to the shoulder, spinning him back, his rifle clattering as he hit the mud with a pained grunt. "Sarge down!" Santos yelled, crawling to him under fire. But Emily was faster, her athletic form low and swift, reaching Knox to assess the wound, with hands steady from untold drills. "Through and through, non-fatal," she said, applying pressure with a field dressing torn from her kit, her blue eyes meeting his shocked gaze. "You can fight, Sergeant. Team covering bursts get him moving." Knox stared up at her, pain etching his features, the prejudice cracking under her competence. You're no observer," he muttered, but there was awe beneath the gruffness. Emily didn't reply, instead barking soft commands. "Pair up, leapfrog to the gap. I'll draw their fire." She saved Santos next. Spotting a grenadier aiming his way, her M40 spoke first. The threat neutralized mid-throw, the explosion harmless in the distance. Santos nodded, gratitude hauling Knox along as the team executed the retreat, their movements synced by her unseen guidance. Bullets whined past, but Emily's precision held the line, each shot an echo of Reed's mantra action, over words turning the tide like the unsung heroines of Vietnam who had saved patrols through sheer will. As they neared relative safety, the twist unfolded. Knox, supported by Santos, glanced back. "Harper, fall back with us," but Emily shook her head, her expression resolute, the cobra tattoo glinting as she adjusted her sleeve. "Go get the team out. I'll cover the rear," Santos protested. "Ma'am, that's suicide." But she was already fading into the shadows, her form blending with the underbrush in a display of force recon stealth that left them breathless. "Where is she going?" Santos whispered curiosity, mingling with worry, as she vanished completely, the jungle claiming her like a secret keeper. Whispers rippled through the team. "She's gone rogue," or "saving our asses again," the mystery deepening her disappearance, a veil over her true capabilities, born from a legacy of ghosts in the machine of war. From her hidden vantage, Emily watched them escape, then turned to the pursuers, her shots ringing out like judgments, creating a corridor of chaos for the enemy. Alone now, the real challenge enveloped her, the threshold not just crossed, but embraced her heart, fueled by the eagle's flight and the cobra's strike, ready for whatever depths awaited. The jungle claimed Emily Harper like an old secret, her disappearance leaving Bravo team in stunned silence as they limped back to Fob Delta. Santos supported Knox, glancing over his shoulder into the green abyss, the question burning. Where did she go? That wasn't just covering fire, that was something else. The shots echoing behind them, precise and unrelenting, bought them time, each report a testament to her unseen vigil. For Emily, this was the series of tests beginning the real forge of allies and enemies, where opposition from within clashed with dangers, without echoing the trials of Marines past, who had faced betrayal and peril in wars that shaped a nation. Alone in the underbrush, Emily moved like a shadow, her breath controlled every step, a calculated whisper on the forest floor. The pursuers, hostile forces closing in, were no phantoms. They were real, their chatter faint but growing as they tracked the team's retreat. Emily's heart pounded, but her training took over the cobra tattoo on her wrist, a silent mantra of coiled power. She ascended a slight rise, using natural concealment ferns and roots to mask her position, a technique straight from force recon manuals, ambush avoidance, through geocode filtering, mentally mapping coordinates to blend with the terrain, avoiding predictable paths that had doomed patrols in Vietnam's deadly games of cat and mouse. Deeper, she went, infiltrating toward what her instincts screamed was an enemy forward post, a tunnel system burrowed into the hillside, camouflaged by vines and earth reminiscent of the Cu Chi tunnels, where American forces had battled unseen foes during Vietnam. Booby traps lurked, tripwires glinting faintly, pressure plates hidden under leaves, each one a potential death sentence. Emily paused, her blue eyes scanning, recalling Reed's lessons. Concealment isn't hiding, it's becoming the environment. Filter your presence like geocode data. Erase your trail, anticipate theirs. She bypassed a wire with a slow, deliberate crawl, her toned body inching forward, sweat mixing with mud, the humidity a relentless foe that tested endurance as much as any enemy. The entrance loomed a dark maw, guarded by 2 sentries, their rifles slung casually, but eyes alert. Emily waited breath-shallow, embodying the deep reconnaissance tactics born in WWII's Pacific, scouts observe, infiltrate, strike. When the moment came, a shift change, she struck hand-to-hand force recon techniques flowing like water. A precise strike to the first guard's carotid, his body lowered silently to avoid noise. The second, neutralized with a chokehold. His struggle brief and muffled. No shots fired, no alarms, raised pure efficiency. the kind that had saved lives in shadowed operations across decades. Inside the tunnel, dimly lit by flickering lanterns, she navigated the labyrinth, avoiding side branches rigged with explosives, her geocode mental map guiding her. Filter out noise. Concealment means invisibility, avoiding ambushes by predicting them. Deeper in, she reached a comms hub, 2 operators hunched over equipment oblivious. With mechanical grace, she disarmed them, a knee to the solar plexus, a elbow strike, bodies slumped without a sound. The intel was gold assault plans, scribbled on maps, comm equipment, buzzing with coordinates for a larger strike on FOB Delta. Emily memorized it all, planting a concealed beacon for later strikes, her actions a bridge to her father's unseen heroism in WWII infiltrations. But extraction loomed perilous, the tests mounting, as distant voices echoed reinforcements. She slipped out a side vent, the jungle welcoming her back. Her solo challenge a forge that tempered her resolve, proving that true strength lay in the shadows. Back at FOB Delta, the team regrouped in the fading light, the base a hive of tension as medics tended wounds. Knox bandaged, and Grimm paced the command tent, his face a storm of conflict. "Harper, she bought us time, but she's gone. Probably he muttered the words heavy, his prejudice warring with grudging respect. The men nodded somberly, thinking her dead whispers of her final stand, stirring unexpected admiration. "She took down at least 5 saved our asses," one said, evoking memories of fallen comrades in past wars. Santos shook his head, staring at the tree line. "She vanished like a ghost. That tattoo, there's more to her." His alliance had solidified in the fire. Now doubt turned to belief, reminding him of his own father's WWII stories of unsung heroes. 2 days passed in uneasy vigil, the team eating rations around a fire, convinced they had lost their observer. Knox downplayed it in reports. Light Resistance 1 MIA, but privately to Santos. She disobeyed, but damn if she didn't fight like a Marine. The opposition softened allies emerging from skepticism. Then a figure emerged from the shadows, caked in mud fatigues, torn but unmistakably Emily, her blue eyes hardened, carrying a muddy satchel. The camp froze, gasps rippling as she dropped it on the table. "Enemy comm equipment assault plans, coordinates for their main hub supply routes." The intel was priceless, detailing a coordinated strike in 36 hours. Santos approached, first helping her sit, his voice awed. "We thought you were dead, ma'am." As she removed her gloves, the cobra tattoo wrapped around the eagle caught the light fully. Santos's eyes widened. "That's Recon Inc., isn't it? Not instructor stuff." Emily tugged her sleeve down but met his gaze. "Sharp eyes, Corporal. Could save your life or get you in trouble." Knox stood apart, opposition lingering but cracking. He had seen the plans, knew they spelled salvation. "How the hell did you get this alone?" Emily's response was calm, the way I was trained. Gradually respect dawned. Knox nodded stiffly, assigning her a bunk without sarcasm. "Get some rest, Lieutenant." The change was palpable. The team sharing glances, allies forming, as her actions bridged divides. Santos reminding her of her father's memory. He'd say, "You're worthy." The human element deepened prejudice, yielding to proof, setting the stage for greater revelations. In the command tent that night, as Emily debriefed with Wallace, a colonel whose crisp uniform belied his own Vietnam scars, the intel unfolded like a dark map. "Their hub is sophisticated tunnels, heavy weapons," she explained, her voice steady despite exhaustion. But a name in the documents chilled her. The Viper. The twist hit like a grenade. Their commander a former treacherous teacher who had once trained her in classified ops. Flashback to a shadowy facility years ago. Emily eager and green under the Viper's tutelage. a brilliant tactician with unorthodox methods blending WWII infiltration with modern asymmetric warfare. War isn't fair, Harper, he had said, teaching her hand-to-hand reconnaissance that turned soldiers into ghosts. Push boundaries, defy conventions. She had idolized him, the cobra in her tattoo, inspired by his emblem, the eagle from her father merging with his venomous precision. But he defected, twisted by unorthodox tactics, rejected by command prejudice against his innovative, ruthless approaches, driving him to the enemy, perverting their shared knowledge into deadly ambushes that cost Allied lives. He turned because the system dismissed him. Emily murmured to Wallace, the human element raw betrayal stung deeper than wounds, echoing her own struggles with doubt. Viper's plans bore his signature funnels, feints, strikes at weaknesses now aimed at Fob Delta. The revelation shifted everything. Enemies weren't faceless. This was personal, a mentor become monster. Santos, overhearing, pieced it. That's why your tactics feel familiar, like fighting a mirror. Knox, still opposing fully, but respecting her intel, growled, if this Viper's real, we hit back. The tests compounded opposition from lingering team doubt, dangerous enemies embodied in a traitor's shadow. Emily's heart ached. The flashback, a wound reopened, but it fueled her. We'll end this. Allies strengthened, enemies revealed, the series of challenges forging bonds amid the jungle's unforgiving test. The revelation of the Viper hung over Fob Delta like a storm cloud, his name a poison that seeped into every briefing, every whispered conversation. Emily Harper felt it most acutely, the betrayal, a fresh scar on her soul, twisting the knife of her past. As night fell, the base buzzed with uneasy preparation, Marines checking weapons and sharing stories around dim lanterns, their voices carrying echoes of older wars, where mentors had turned foe, like the double agents in WWII's shadowy espionage. Emily stood apart, her blue eyes distant, the cobra tattoo a hidden pulse under her sleeve. The tests had forged her allies like Santos emerging from the crucible, but now the approach to the inmost cave loomed, the heart of the enemy's lair, where barriers harsh and unforgiving awaited testing, not just body, but spirit. Segment 1. Preparing for assault, dawn broke with a gray pallor, the jungle mist clinging like forgotten regrets. Colonel Wallace's helicopter touched down unannounced, its rotors slicing the air with authoritative whir, stirring the base into a frenzy of salutes and speculation. Wallace, a towering figure in his 60s, with a chest full of ribbons from Vietnam, and beyond, stepped out, his crisp uniform, a stark contrast to the muddied fatigues around him, his bearing that of a man who had mentored generations through the fires of conflict. He wasn't here for pleasantries. High command transports like his signaled something big, much like the urgent insertions during WWII's Pacific offensives, where leaders rallied troops against overwhelming odds. Wallace convened the senior staff in the command tent, his voice gravelly with experience, eyes scanning the room until they landed on Emily. Recent intel confirms increased activity in Sector Foxtrot, Viper's fingerprints all over it, he stated, pointing to the map with a finger scarred from old shrapnel. We need deep recon, infiltrate, observe, report. Solo op, minimal footprint. The room fell silent, the assignment a death sentence in that hostile terrain riddled with patrols and traps. Knox straightened his wound, still fresh, but his voice steady. Bravo team's ready, sir. Wallace nodded, then added casually, Lieutenant Harper will lead the recon. Gasps rippled. Knox's face reddened. With respect, sir, she's still green to our ops. Wallace's gaze hardened, a mentor's steel beneath the surface. Is that so? Her intel just saved this base? Sounds acclimated to me. Emily remained silent, but inside the weight crushed her. The Viper, her former teacher, the man who had shaped her into a ghost of the battlefield, now the architect of this nightmare. Internal trauma surged, memories of his defection flooding back the day he vanished, taking classified tactics with him, perverting them into weapons against his own. Why him? She thought, nearly collapsing under the burden, her knees weakening as doubt clawed anew. Am I strong enough to face my own creation? The cave, the enemy's core, felt like a personal abyss, barriers of betrayal harsher than any physical wall. She excused herself, briefly stepping into the misty dawn, leaning against a tent pole, as waves of nausea hit. Self-doubt whispered, "Give up. Let others handle it. You're not your father's daughter." But then her hand brushed the letter in her pocket, faded words from Sergeant Thomas Harper, written before Okinawa. When the darkness closes in, remember the light within. We fought not for glory, but for each other, for the legacy that endures. His memory revived her, a warm surge against the cold trauma. He had nearly collapsed on those beaches, stories told of men breaking under fire, yet he rose eagle-strong for his brothers. Reed's voice joined. Action. Harper, face the cave, emerge stronger. Emily straightened the cobra coiling and resolved the eagle ready to soar. Returning to the tent, she stepped forward when Wallace asked for her input. The standard routes are traps, valleys like Vietnam kill zones. I suggest elevation shifts harder, but multiple vantage points. The room hushed her analysis, reflecting depths beyond her cover. Wallace smiled faintly. Viable. You're on point at door 300. Knox grudged agreement, the preparation sealing her fate. The assault's prelude barriers looming, but her spirit revived by paternal memory. Ready to delve. Segment 2. Entering the cave. Under cover of pre-dawn darkness, Emily slipped through the perimeter wire, her gear minimal 30 pounds of essentials water, ammo, the beacon device, her M40, a silent companion. The jungle enveloped her, a barrier of tangled roots and inky shadows, each step a test of will. She moved like mist boots, silent on the damp earth techniques from Force Recon, turning her into a phantom geocode, filtering in her mind, mapping evasion routes to avoid detection, much like WWII, scouts dodging patrols on enemy islands. The terrain grew harsher, steep inclines, slick with dew vines, like snares, the air heavy with the threat of rain. Viper's influence haunted her, his unorthodox tactics, likely guarding the base barriers designed by the man who knew her every move. By midday, she reached an overlook, the enemy base below a camouflaged fortress, blending with the terrain, more fortified than intel, suggested tunnels snaking underground, like Vietnam's infamous networks. Infiltrating meant crossing open ground nearly impossible without cover. She waited for dusk, then began the descent. Heart pounding as patrols passed meters away. Near the perimeter, disaster struck a twig snap, not hers, but from a shifting guard. 3 hostiles emerged, search pattern closing on her position. Options raced, retreat exposed. Her fight compromised everything. As they neared the ground, gave a hidden tunnel entrance, collapsing under controlled weight, swallowing her silently. She absorbed the fall with a roll, Force Recon absorbing impact, without sound, turning mishap into opportunity. Inside the dim tunnels, barriers multiplied, low ceilings, forcing crawls, booby traps, glinting pressure plates, tripwires. Emily navigated with painstaking care, using a penlight, sparingly, her breath echoing softly. Neutralizing a lone guard with a silent takedown, she pressed on the air, stale and oppressive. The comms hub loomed, operators manning radios, plans spread out. With Viper's taut precision, she struck hand to hand, disarms, bodies lowered quietly. The intel chilled, detailed assault on Delta Viper's signature everywhere. She planted the beacon, a non-lethal DARPA precursor compact tech disrupting neural functions for precision strikes, a modern echo of WWII innovations that turned tides without mass destruction. Exfiltration proved the harshest barrier, alarms, stirring faintly patrols converging. Twice nearly captured, she evaded by submersion in a muddy streambank, the mini-climax of endurance. For 8 grueling hours, she lay immersed, breathing through a reed, like Vietnam's tunnel rats, the water cold and unrelenting mud caking her skin. Internal trauma flared Viper's betrayal, mocking her isolation, doubt whispering collapse. But Father's memory anchored. Endure the dawn follows the dark. Reed's voice, breathe steady, become the shadow. She held emerging as patrols passed the cave's heart-breached barriers, surmounted her spirit teetering but unbroken, ready for the ordeal ahead. The inmost cave's secrets weighed heavy on Emily Harper as she trudged back toward Fob Delta mud. Caking her fatigues, the beacon's placement, a small victory amid the storm of betrayal. The Viper's shadow loomed larger now. His tactics, a mirror of her own training, twisting her resolve like a knife in old wounds. Dawn's light pierced the canopy as she approached the perimeter, her body aching from the 8-hour submersion, but her spirit unbroken, fueled by her father's enduring legacy and Reed's unyielding wisdom. The base was on high alert, fragments of her intel already sparking preparations. But the true ordeal, the life and death climax, was about to unfold, testing her mettle in ways that would echo the heroic stands of Marines across generations. The assault began with an unnatural stillness, the jungle holding its breath, as if sensing the gathering fury. Emily slipped back into the base just as the first alarms wailed, enemy movement detected across multiple sectors. Viper's coordinated strike accelerating ahead of schedule. "They're coming," she warned Wallace in the command tent, her voice steady despite exhaustion, laying out the predicted tactics. Feints from the east to draw us out. Then heavy push from north and west, Viper's playbook, designed to exploit overcommitment, like the diversions in Vietnam that turned patrols into massacres. The colonel nodded, his Vietnam scars seeming deeper in the dim light, mobilizing defenses with her input overlapping fields of fire, claymores positioned along likely approaches. As the enemy closed, the base erupted into action. Marines manning barricades, weapons checked with the grim determination of those who knew the cost of freedom, reminiscent of WWII foxholes, where ordinary men became legends. Emily took position on an elevated platform, her M40, an extension of her will coordinating with unexpected authority. Sniper teams hold for my mark priority on their heavies. The first wave hit like a tidal wave explosions, rocking the perimeter gunfire, stitching the air, the acrid smoke evoking battlefields from Normandy to Khe Sanh. Emily predicted each move, flank attempt, north shift fire. Her calls born from Viper's twisted lessons turned chaos into order, her shots dropping leaders with surgical precision, saving lives as the team held. Outrage built as the assault intensified. Knox, bandaged but defiant, led a counter from the western bunker, his voice booming over the comms. "Push them back." But Viper's tactics ensnared him a hidden machine gun nest, pinning his position, bullets chewing the sandbags, his men falling wounded around him. "We're trapped," he radioed, panic edging his tone for the first time, the prejudice that once blinded him, now irrelevant in the face of death. Emily saw it from her vantage, her heart clenching. Knox, the skeptic-turned reluctant ally, now a symbol of the team's vulnerability. Without hesitation, she abandoned her post, moving through the battlefield like a ghost dodging fire with force recon grace. "Stay down," she ordered, dropping beside him. Her M40, blazing 3 advancing hostiles, felled in quick succession, impossible angles conquered by sheer skill. But salvation came at a cost. As she pulled Knox to safety, a round grazed her side, fire blooming in her ribs, blood soaking her fatigues. She staggered, but pressed on the wound, a harsh barrier mirroring her internal scars. "You're hit!" Knox gasped, awe mixing with concern. Emily gritted her teeth, the pain a roar, but her father's memory whispered endurance. "We bleed for our brothers, Em." The outrage fueled her how many had fallen to such prejudice-fueled blindness. She coordinated the retreat, her voice cutting through the din, proving her mettle in the crucible as the base teetered on collapse. The unexpected twist shattered the fragile hold. As Emily bandaged her wound in the command tent, Wallace burst in his face ashen. "Comms are jammed, internal sabotage." The misdirection hit. Everyone had assumed Viper an external phantom, his forces the sole threat. But the patterns didn't align, leaks from within, feeding him real-time intel. "There's a traitor." Emily realized, her voice a whisper of betrayal. The cave's depths, revealing not just enemy strongholds, but corruption in their ranks. Suspicion rippled, eyes turning to each other, the team fracturing under the weight. Then the reveal. Wallace pulled her aside, his mentor's gaze heavy. "It's time, Major Harper." The room froze. Emily is Major Ghost from Force Recon, embedded under cover to root out the leak, her instructor facade. A ruse. Flashbacks surged her true service in Black Ops training under Viper, before his defect, his unorthodox methods, shaping her into a legend. Ghost operations, where she vanished into shadows, striking unseen, a legacy blending WWII stealth with modern precision. "You trained him." Knox demanded outrage, turning to shock, the misdirection complete. Viper wasn't just external. His influence had seeped inside the insider trader, one of their own swayed by his ideology. Santos pieced it. "That tattoo, Ghost Unit Inc." Emily nodded, the weight lifting slightly. Deception was necessary to draw out the rot. The twist reframed everything, her dismissals, abater skills, the trap. But the trauma deepened Viper's defection, born from rejected innovations, now poisoning her world. The base shook under renewed assault. The traitor's sabotage exposed, a junior officer confessed, under pressure, his prejudice mirroring Knox's old views. Allies realigned, Knox's opposition crumbling. "I was wrong, Major." The ordeal's heart pulsed, life and death hanging on her next moves, the cave's barriers closing in. In the climax's grip, Emily led the charge to Viper's forward post, the battle a symphony of fury. Hand to hand, in the dim command hut, she confronted him. His weathered face a ghost from her past eyes gleaming with twisted pride. "Ghost," he acknowledged, blocking her strike to their combat, a dance of master and pupil. "You came." Viper revealed all. "You are my best student. But prejudice pushed me away. Command rejected my tactics, called them reckless. I sought those who valued innovation." The words stung, humanizing the enemy, his defection a cry against the system that had sidelined him, much like the barriers Emily faced. But betrayal fueled her rage, good men dead from his perversions. The fight intensified, punches traded, Viper's unorthodox, holds nearly overwhelming, but Emily's cobra strike, a precise elbow to his temple, turned the tide. She captured him, restraints clicking as reinforcements arrived. His parting words a whisper, "The student surpasses the teacher." Satisfaction washed over the base, saved Viper's network crumbling from the intel, the ordeal's peak a cathartic release. Emily stood tall, wounded, but victorious, her mettle proven the legacy of her father, and Reed shining through a beacon for the team, now forever changed. The smoke from the final bursts of gunfire hung in the air like a veil over Fob Delta. The base's perimeter scarred, but secure, Viper's forces retreating into the jungle's embrace as his capture shattered their command. Emily Harper stood amid the chaos, Viper bound and silent beside her, his eyes meeting hers with a mix of defeat and twisted respect. The ordeal's fury had passed, leaving a hush broken only by the groans of the wounded and the crackle of radios reporting all clear. Her side throbbed from the graze blood drying on her fatigues, but the pain was distant, a badge of survival, much like the scars her father had carried home from the Pacific, if only in stories. The team emerged from their positions, faces smeared with dirt and sweat, eyes wide with the realization of how close they had come to the edge. This was the reward, the seizing of the sword, not just victory over the enemy, but the hard-won acknowledgement that reshaped bonds forged in fire. Santos was the first to approach his rifle slung over his shoulder, his expression a blend of awe and relief as he clasped her arm. Major. Ghost, he corrected himself, the title fitting like a long-held secret revealed. You didn't just save the base, you saved us all. That confrontation. We heard the fight over the comms. You're a legend. The others gathered the team that had once dismissed her as a princess, now nodding in silent accord, their prejudices crumbling like the enemy's lines. One by one, they voiced it. Never seen shooting like that. A corporal muttered, his voice thick with emotion, recalling his own grandfather's tales of WWII snipers holding hills against impossible odds. You called every move, knew their playbook inside out. Another added, we owe you our lives, ma'am. The acknowledgments flowed raw and unfiltered, echoing the camaraderie of Marines across eras, where survival bred unbreakable respect. Knox limped forward, last his shoulder, bandaged his face, a map of conflict pride warring with humility. He stopped before her, the man who had sneered and belittled, now standing tall, though his eyes dropped briefly in shame. Major Harper, he began, his gravelly voice cracking just slightly, a vulnerability that touched the heart reminiscent of old veterans sharing regrets over campfires. I was wrong, dead wrong, called you dead weight a liability, but you carried us all. Disobeyed orders, sure, but if you hadn't... He trailed off, swallowing hard, the apology hanging heavy. I'm sorry. For the name's the doubt. You fought like hell, better than any of us. It's an honor to serve with you. Emily met his gaze, her blue eyes softening the moment a bridge over the chasm of misunderstanding. Apology accepted, Sergeant. We all fight our own battles, some just hidden deeper. Knox nodded, the team watching as he extended a hand, the gesture sealing the shift from opposition to alliance, a victory sweeter than any tactical win. With Viper's intel in hand, detailed maps, timelines, and weak points extracted under Wallace's watchful eye, the base gained a decisive advantage. The major assault plan to overwhelm them at dawn was preempted airstrikes called on coordinates from the beacon. Viper's supply routes disrupted his network, fracturing like glass under pressure. Casualties minimal, the victory, a testament to Emily's endurance preventing what could have been a bloodbath reminiscent of Vietnam's Tet Offensive, where surprise had turned tides, but at great cost. Wallace confirmed it over the comms. Intel solid, assault averted. Stand down. Cheers rippled through the ranks. The reward, tangible lives, saved a base, held the sword seized from the enemy's grasp. In the quiet aftermath, as medics tended the wounded and the sun climbed higher, Emily gathered the team around a makeshift fire, the human element emerging like a balm for weary souls. She pulled out her father's letter, the faded paper trembling slightly in her hands, sharing it not as a commander, but as a fellow Marine carrying the weight of legacy. My dad wrote this before Okinawa, she said softly, her voice laced with emotion that tugged at the heartstrings, evoking the greatest generation's quiet heroism. He was like you, all ordinary men facing extraordinary odds. Resilience isn't born, it's forged in the moments we want to break, but don't. He lost friends to ambushes, prejudice in the ranks, but he endured for them, for us. The team listened rapt. Knox's eyes misting as he thought of his own service scars, Santos nodding in recognition of shared burdens. The letter's words inspired weaving resilience into their fabric. We fight not just against the enemy out there, but the doubts within. Stand together, and no cave is too deep, no barrier too high. Tears gleamed in weathered eyes, the moment touching depths of compassion. Senior audiences might recall their own letters, home the unspoken sacrifices that built a nation. You've all shown that resilience today. Emily continued her wound, a visible testament. Knox, your leadership held the line. Santos, your faith turned the tide. We're more than our ranks. We're family forged in fire. The team acknowledged not just her victory, but their own growth. Hugs, handshakes, a collective exhale. Intel from Viper had prevented the assault, but this, the human connection, was the true reward, a sword of unity seized from division's grasp, inspiring them forward with hearts renewed. As the sun set on the secured base, Emily felt the advantage solidify. The Viper neutralized the team, transformed. But victories in war, as her father knew, were bittersweet. The road ahead still shadowed. Yet in this moment, resilience shone a beacon for all who had faced their own ordeals. The glow of victory at Fob Delta was short-lived, the air still thick with the scent of gunpowder and sweat, as the team began the arduous journey back to normalcy, or what passed for it in this forsaken jungle. Emily Harper leaned against a crate in the command tent, her wound bandaged, but throbbing Viper's captured form, a silent trophy under guard nearby. The acknowledgments from her comrades lingered like a warm ember. Knox's apology, a bridge built over old divides, the shared reading of her father's letter binding them in resilience. But war rarely allowed for clean endings. The road back was fraught with unexpected challenges, the enemy not fully vanquished, and shadows of betrayal still lurking. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the base, reports crackled over the radio, scattered hostiles regrouping Viper's lieutenants, rallying for a desperate counterstrike. The ordeal had forged them, but the path home demanded one last test of endurance, echoing the weary marches of the WWII troops after hard-won battles carrying wounds of body and soul. Segment 1. Regroup. The base hummed with purposeful activity as night fell, Marines reinforcing positions, medics tending the injured with the quiet efficiency born of too many such nights. Emily stood with Wallace and Knox poring over Viper's intel maps, detailing fallback points, his network fractured, but not broken. "They'll hit us again," she said, her voice steady despite the fatigue, etching her features, blue eyes scanning the documents like a hawk. Viper-style regroup, fast strike at weak spots before we recover. Like the Japanese counterattacks in the Pacific, relentless even in defeat. Knox nodded his respect, now open no trace of old prejudice. "We've got the advantage, now your intel gives us their playbook." Santos joined them, handing out fresh ammo, his alliance a steadfast presence. "We're ready, Major. That letter? It reminded me why we fight." But the enemy regrouped with Viper-like cunning scouts, reporting movement converging from multiple vectors, their numbers swelling with reinforcements drawn by Viper's distress signals. Alarms blared as the first probes tested the perimeter, sporadic gunfire grenades blooming in the dark, the jungle alive with threats. Emily felt the weight press down her wound, a constant reminder of fragility, but she pushed through, coordinating defenses with Wallace's approval. "We can't let them activate Protocol Mirage," she urged, her tone laced with the authority of her ghost days. Wallace hesitated, then nodded. Authorization granted. Make it count. Protocol Mirage was DARPA's cutting-edge, non-lethal disruptor, a 2025 AI-enhanced update, blending sound and light waves to incapacitate without killing lasers, creating plasma bursts for ear-splitting noise. AI algorithms targeting neural frequencies to induce disorientation, much like the evolving sonic weapons tested in labs to minimize casualties while maximizing control. Emily keyed the specialized device hidden in the base's arsenal, its hum building, as AI scanned the approaching forces, filtering geocode data to focus beams. Firing now, she announced the system unleashing invisible lances, brilliant flashes and concussive sounds rippling out enemy fighters, clutching heads, dropping weapons in confusion, the non-lethal assault turning their advance into stumbling retreat. Yet in the regroup's midst, the twist struck like lightning as the protocol cleared. The field, comms flickered an internal jam, deliberate sabotage. It's from inside, Santos realized, his voice tight with betrayal. Wallace's face hardened, cross-checking logs. The traitor Viper's insider. The reveal caused surprise to ripple through the tent. A teammate, the junior officer, who had seemed loyal, exposed by mismatched signals, his prejudice against outsiders, like Emily, making him susceptible to Viper's ideology. He fed them our positions. Knox growled outrage, boiling the discovery, a gut punch echoing historical betrayals, like turncoats in WWII's espionage rings. The man confessed under guard his words. A poison, Viper promised, change no more rigid commands. The team reeled, trust shaken, but Emily's calm anchored them. We regroup stronger, focus on the fight. The twist fortified their resolve. The road back, now a gauntlet of internal and external foes, but with allies united, they pressed on. Cementothur. Final push, as the enemy, dazed by Mirage, but rallying under Viper's lingering influence, mounted their final push. The base braced for the onslaught. Waves crashed against the perimeter, heavy fire mortars thumping the night alive with tracers like deadly fireworks. Emily wound, seeping through her bandage, refused the medics taking a forward position with her. M40, the rifle's history, a quiet ally born in 1966. Fires it had seen final pushes in Vietnam, where resilience turned desperation into triumph. Hold the line, she called, her voice a beacon predicting Viper's feints. They're shifting west to reinforce there. Santos and Knox fought beside her, the team a cohesive unit, now their earlier divisions forged into strength. But the push intensified, enemy commandos breaching a weak point, close quarters chaos erupting. Emily led the counter, moving through the fray with ghost precision, dropping threats with controlled bursts. A grenade exploded nearby, shrapnel tearing into her leg. She staggered, severely wounded, blood pooling, vision blurring. "Major," Santos yelled, covering her as she fell against a barricade, pain a white-hot roar. Doubt surged the road back, seeming impossible, her body failing as Viper's forces pressed. "I can't," she whispered, the trauma of betrayal and loss crashing down Father's letter, a distant echo. Knox hauled her up. "You saved us before fight now." His words, once laced with scorn, now inspired, reminding her of Reed's mantra, endure. Severely wounded but unbowed, Emily led the final counter, hobbling to a vantage, her M40 steady despite trembling hands. Through the scope, she spotted the enemy leader, Viper's second, coordinating the assault 300 yards out. Breath ragged, she channeled her legacy, Father's eagle soaring above pain, Cobra striking true. "One last shot," she murmured, the team holding breath as she aimed. She breathes, steadily pulls the trigger. The round flew true, the leader crumpling his fall, breaking their momentum. Cheers erupted as the enemy faltered, retreating into the night the base secured. Santos helped her to safety. "You did it, Major." Knox saluted. No one else could. The road back, paved with blood and unexpected trials, led to dawn's light, Emily's medal shining the victory, a testament to resilience that touched the soul. The dawn after the final push brought a fragile peace to Ephab Delta, the jungle's chorus resuming, as if the night's fury had been a mere dream. Emily Harper sat in the makeshift interrogation area, Viper across from her, bound but unbroken, his eyes holding the ghosts of their shared past. The base hummed with recovery, medics bandaging wounds, teams securing the perimeter, the air thick with the scent of cordite and earth. Viper's capture was a triumph, his forces scattered, but the road back had revealed deeper fissures. The insider trader's betrayal, a symptom of rot within. Now, in this quiet aftermath, the resurrection began, not just victory over external foes, but a final twist, exposing the internal system's flaws, a rebirth through confronting prejudice that had festered like an old war wound. Emily felt it stirring her own revival, mirroring the team's, the eagle in her tattoo, soaring above the cobra's coil, symbolizing triumph over hidden venom. Segment 1. System twist. Viper leaned back against his restraints, his weathered face etched with the lines of a man who had seen too many battles, his voice a low rumble that carried echoes of their training days. "You think this ends with me, Ghost," he said, using her call sign like a reluctant accolade. "Capture the teacher, but the lessons live on." Emily met his gaze, her blue eyes unflinching despite the ache in her side, the wound a constant reminder of the ordeal's cost. Wallace stood nearby, arms crossed, his Vietnam-era authority, a silent presence, while Knox and Santos lingered at the tent-flap allies, now drawn into this unraveling. "Why, Viper?" Emily asked, her tone laced with the pain of betrayal, touching depths that resonated with losses from wars. Long past, mentors turned adversaries like the ideological defections during Cold War shadows. Viper's laugh was bitter, devoid of mirth. "Prejudice, my best student. The Marines, the system pushed me away. My tactics, unorthodox, yes, blending Wabuturnotufuchos infiltration with asymmetric strikes, predicting enemy minds before they moved. But they called it reckless, sidelined me because I didn't fit the mold. Gender prejudice. It runs deeper than women like you dismissed as liabilities, just as innovative minds like mine were cast aside for not conforming. The revelation hit like a delayed explosion. Viper's defect wasn't mere greed or ideology. It was born from the same systemic bias that had belittled Emily. The rigid hierarchies that favored tradition over talent, echoing the barriers women faced in WWII. Confined to support roles, while men claimed glory, or in Vietnam, where female operatives like Reed battled invisibility. They rejected my methods because they threatened the old guard. Viper continued his words, a poison pill. So I found those who valued them, turned your lessons against you. The team reeled Knox's face, darkening memories of his own dismissals, in early career, flashing Santos, clenching fists at the injustice that mirrored family stories of overlooked veterans. Emily confronted Wallace, then turning to the colonel with a fire kindled by Viper's truth. "Is this what we've become, sir, a system that drives its best away? I've faced at the stairs the princess taunts just like Viper's ideas were buried. How many have we lost to prejudice?" Wallace's expression shifted, the mentor's facade cracking under her gaze, his own history of commanding diverse units in Vietnam weighing heavy. "It's not that simple, Major. Chains of command preserve order." But Emily pressed her voice, emotional, touching the heart of institutional flaws. "Order at what cost?" "My father died for a better America, one where merit matters, not molds. We've won the battle, but the war on bias rages within. The surprise twist unfolded as Wallace offered resolution. Command's impressed promotion to full major desk at Pendleton away from this. The team held breath, a reward fitting her valor, a escape from the jungle's grip. But Emily refused her decision, a bombshell that reshaped everything. No, sir. I choose to stay to train this team change from the root. No more sidelining talent. No more prejudice pushing people like Viper or me away. Gasps rippled Knox's eyes, widening in respect. Santos nodding with inspired awe. It was a victory over the system. By refusing assent, she dismantled its flaws from within, opting to mentor Bravo team, instilling resilience and equality, much like Reed had done for her. Wallace paused, then saluted. As you wish, Ghost. Lead the change. The twist sealed the resurrection. External enemies vanquished, internal prejudices confronted the team, reborn under her guidance. Segment 2. Internal victory. As the base settled into a watchful calm, Emily's refusal rippled inward, a resurrection of spirit that healed deeper wounds. She gathered the team under the stars, the jungle's nocturnal symphony, a backdrop to their circle faces, illuminated by a flickering lantern like campfires of old, where veterans shared truths that bound them. Her wound ached, but it was the internal scars, the doubt from Viper's betrayal, the echoes of her father's absence, that she confronted now. We've beaten the enemy out there. She began, her voice soft, yet commanding, blue eyes reflecting the fire's glow. But the real victory is here, over the biases within us. Santos spoke first, his alliance a pillar. That tattoo, it's more than ink. It's you, Major. Facing Viper. You showed us how to rise. Emily nodded, pulling out her father's letter once more, the paper worn like a talisman. This kept me going, his words from before Okinawa. Resurrect from the ashes, Yem. Every fall is a chance to stand taller. She shared stories of female Marines educating with gentle passion, like Colonel Reed in Vietnam, overcoming prejudice to gather intel that saved thousands, or the WASPs in WWII flying missions men deemed too dangerous only to be forgotten. They resurrected the system by proving worth, inspiring generations. The team listened, hearts touched. Knox, wiping a tear, his own prejudices laid bare. I was blind like the old guard. But you changed me, Santos added, and us will carry that resilience. The internal victory bloomed, Emily resurrected through family legacy. The letter, a conduit to her father's spirit, healing the Viper's wound. We're all ghosts of our pasts, she said, inspiring Santos and Knox to share their own, Knox's Vietnam regrets, Santos's family losses, forging unbreakable bonds. Overcome prejudice not with anger, but action, train the next generation to see beyond. The team pledged a collective resurrection, no more division, only unity. As stars wheeled overhead, Emily felt whole. The system's twist overcome her inner demons, slain the victory, a beacon of hope for all who had faced similar shadows. Return with the elixir. The resurrection at FOB Delta lingered like the first light after a long night, the base transformed, not just by the victory over Viper and his forces, but by the deeper triumph over the prejudices that had divided them. Emily Harper now openly. Major Ghost refused the easy path of promotion and retreat, choosing instead to root out the system's flaws from within. As the team recovered, she turned her focus to training Bravo Squad, renamed Alpha, in honor of their rebirth, becoming a living symbol of resilience and change. In the sweltering days that followed under the jungle's watchful canopy, Emily gathered them on the makeshift parade ground. Her wound, healing but the scars of battle, a visible reminder of their shared ordeal. We're not just survivors, she told them, her voice steady and warm, blue eyes meeting each gaze with the compassion of one who had walked their path. We're the elixir, the remedy for what ails our core. Prejudice festers in shadows, but together we bring the light. Emily's training was rigorous, yet infused with the human touch that touched Hart's mornings. Started with tactical drills, her force recon expertise shining as she taught ambush avoidance and deep reconnaissance techniques, honed from WWII's bold infiltrations to Vietnam's gritty survivals. But afternoons brought reflection circles around the fire, where they shared stories, much like veterans of old, recounting D-Day or Tet. Knox, once her harshest critic, now her staunchest supporter, led sessions on leadership admitting his flaws. I was blind to strength in disguise. Major showed me true command lifts all. Santos, ever the ally, absorbed her lessons on endurance, his own family tales of immigrant Marines blending with hers, inspiring the younger recruits to see beyond ranks and gender. As weeks turned to months, Emily became a symbol not just for Alpha Squad, but whispered legends rippling through other bases, the ghost who shattered biases, capturing a traitor while forging unbreakable bonds. She quoted her father's letter often, "In the shadows of prejudice, true strength emerges." The words became their mantra, etched into their gear, a grand message for society and future generations. In a world quick to judge Emily's story, reminded that victory wasn't in conquest alone, but in uplifting others, overcoming the internal enemies of doubt and division, much like the greatest generation, who rebuilt a nation after WWII, or the resilient souls who healed from Vietnam's wounds. Her training emphasized the simulations, where they role-played prejudice scenarios, learning empathy alongside marksmanship, ensuring the elixir of change flowed forward. The squad transformed under her guidance, Knox mentoring with newfound humility, Santos leading recon with precision, born of trust. They became the template, a unit where merit trumped molds, inspiring command to pilot similar programs, a ripple effect touching the broader military and beyond. For senior hearts, it evoked nostalgia for American heritage, the melting pot of valor where farmers became heroes, women broke barriers, and unity forged a superpower. Emily shared meals with them, recounting Reed's Vietnam struggles. She faced dismissal daily, yet saved lives through sheer grit. We're her legacy, yours too. Tears flowed in those moments, bonds deepening the human heart, prevailing over the machinery of war. Yet the aftertaste was bittersweet, an open ending hinting at horizons beyond. As Alpha Squad prepared for their next deployment, Emily received a sealed envelope from Wallace, another mission shadows calling her back to the fray. The fight never ends. She told them, her voice laced with quiet resolve, nostalgia for her father's unfinished battle stirring. But we carry the elixir, resilience, unity, the strength to change. They saluted as she boarded the chopper, the jungle fading below her new mission. A mystery, but her impact, enduring a symbol for generations, proving that from prejudice's shadows, true heroes emerge. If Emily's story touches you, please like, share, and comment your memories about silent heroes. Sub the channel to explore more inspiring stories. Together, I once thought war was just about guns, but through stories like this, I realize it's also about the human heart, about overcoming prejudice to protect what we cherish. That makes me appreciate veterans more, and I hope it motivates you too.